Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Pick Six Podcast, CBS Sports Daily NFL Podcast. I am Will Brinson. I am your host. This is the trade deadline for the National Football League recap show. Joining me, my esteemed guest, one from Syracuse, a longtime NFL writer who used to work at Fan House, now at CBS Sports, and promoted to junior draft writer, Ryan Wilson. Joining me all the way from Nashville, Tennessee, where he resides with his lovely wife and his daughter, Annabelle, Jonathan Breech. And from Boston, Sully. What's up, Tyler? Sullivan, how you doing? What's up, fellas?
What's going on?
Just wanted to break down some biographical.
And from Boston, the guy who will be single if you give him $6 million.
It's true.
The guy
Very
who
true.
called his wedding for $6 million. All right, so it's the NFL trade deadline, and we are going to hang out for the next 20 minutes here, and then we'll fire up the actual podcast, which you'll hear in audio form. So if you're listening, if you're kicking it with us on YouTube, you may get a little bit of double down stuff, but we wanted to get going early since the NFL trade deadline is loose as hell. It is actually factually the single greatest NFL trade deadline in the history of professional football. Anyone disagree?
I don't know what the other ones are that would come close.
No, the only other trade I could think of that's like as crazy was like what, Carson Palmer back in the day? Like, no, you don't really get these.
Not even Jimmy Garoppolo on Halloween back in 2017-ish, maybe. That didn't
God, the Palmer trade was wild.
It's like the second time we brought that trade up in a week.
That's right. Wilson and I were, I'm trying to think, was Breech?
Well, in 2015, Breech wrote a terrible story about Brady Quinn, so he's at least been here since 2015.
I love that Brady found that. Really rough day. If the rule of three is anything, Wilson, you're gonna have something. You're gonna have something embaracing happen to you in the next.
I'm gonna get hit by a
hours.
trash truck later this afternoon. I got to stay indoors.
I mean, make my weekend.
Brady tweeting that out. So all I saw was click, 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 click. I got the free click, so I'm good.
Well, yeah, I love it. Like, I've wondered if they're gonna be if I've written stuff about Brady Quinn on the internet that he would get mad at, but I don't think there's much out there. I think. Yeah, you could. I've Googled it. I mean, Breech clearly has a strangle. Breech has another one too, and I think he's cut by the Seahawks. And Breech said it was like "Sayonara, loser" was the closing line. I think.
I will say this: back when we worked at Fan House, I coined the 2007 draft. Is when Brady
2007 is what we call it here in.
Yeah, I forgot how to count. When Brady was in the green room for so long because he didn't go as early as we all thought. I did coin him sitting in the Aaron Rodgers Memorial Green Room because 2 years prior Aaron Rodgers got stuck in there. But there are worse things you could write.
I might need to go dig into that and see what Wilson wrote about Brady Quinn. Boy, that would really wreck your week, wouldn't it?
I don't think
anxiety you'd have filled with that. All right, let's get into the trade deadline anyway.
I don't know if he'd hang up on me or not, but it'd be close.
I think he would probably be at least insulted enough to close a browser window if you guys were on like a live podcast or something. But who knows? What is your favorite deal of the day so far, Sully?
I think my favorite deal is Bradley Chubb going to the Miami Dolphins. I mean, that's probably the biggest one.
Answer.
That's the biggest one, but to me, that's the craziest one. And for me, what makes it even crazier is when you look at it in totality of all the first round picks that the Dolphins got as part of the deal with the 49ers to go up to get Trey Lance. You know, part of it gets you Jalen Waddle, part of it gets you Tyreek Hill, and now part of it gets you Bradley Chubb. That's a 3-run home run right there for the Miami Dolphins.
Not a grand slam, though, for 3-run homer. Let me ask you this.
Need one more.
If you are the Miami Dolphins, the Denver Broncos, and let's say the season goes as it's going on the offensive side of the ball, Breech, I'll ask you first. Are you in any way, shape, or form entertaining the possibility of drafting a quarterback with that first-round pick you just got?
If you're the Dolphins?
If you're the Denver Broncos.
Oh, if you're the Denver Broncos, no. You are look, and here is the dumb thing that we talked about last week that the Broncos did was giving Russell Wilson the contract extension before they saw him do anything on the field in Denver. If they don't give him that extension, then that's absolutely in play that, yes, you can draft a quarterback and because you're not tied to Russell Wilson very long. But now you gave him that extension, you're stuck. It's just you better hope Russell Wilson flips the switch and turns around and looks like he did from 2012 to 2019, or you're cooked because you're just.
What if he plays the exact same way for the rest of the season, though?
I mean, You just can't do anything. I mean, there's no team that's going to take on his contract in a trade, so that trading's not an option. You can't cut him because you're going to take such a monstrous dead cap hit that would actually be, I think, right here, according to Spot Check, $107 million.
They are tied to Russell Wilson for the next few.
Okay, I'm just asking. Like, if you love,
what if you love him and trading him and cutting him? Like, they're just stuck with him.
What if you love Bryce Young as much as John Elway? You still don't do it? For example, like, what if you're like, oh my God, this guy is going to be the next Joe Burrow?
I don't think drafting one is a different story. If you think that you can wait 2 years.
Wilson's talking about Wilson's saying the pick they just got.
Yeah.
So it's got to be this year or nothing.
Yeah, just for the purposes of conversation. I get it. I get the contract stuff. I'm just asking.
If I am of the belief that if you love a quarterback prospect at any point, like you really believe like a quarterback prospect is a franchise quarterback and you have the opportunity to select him in the draft, then you take him and you worry about the consequences later. If it becomes Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre 2.0, oh, well, that'll work out pretty good for Denver. So I have, but like you don't mortgage a bunch of picks and to move up or anything like that. If a quarterback comes to you in the draft.
Yeah, I'm Will on that one. That's exactly where I would land on it. If a guy lands in your lap, then you do it. You lose the luxury of having a quarterback on his rookie deal and being able to do all that stuff because you have Russell Wilson basically throughout that entire contract. But if you have a quarterback that you like falling in your lap, you absolutely have to still do it.
Okay.
And you would think, what if the Broncos got the 3rd overall pick and you're the front office being like, look, Russ, it's your fault we're here. We have the 3rd overall pick because you weren't good at all. So maybe we might look at replacing you. But we all know how Russell Wilson reacted the last time his general manager was out looking at
that would go over well.
Well, it doesn't matter if it'll go over real well. Play better. It's not a problem. Like that's it.
Like Breech just pointed out the salary cap implications, and that's a huge concern. But I'm at the point after watching Russ thinking, like, I don't know if it makes sense to stay tied to him if this is what it's going to look like. I don't know if you have any proof that it's going to get better.
But it does. You don't have a choice.
I get it. But I'm still. You have a choice. It's just going to hurt.
Right. And you have a choice of, you might not be able to get rid of them, but you could still, put a disgruntled guy on your bench or something along those lines. Like I was saying, though, you just lose the flexibility of having a rookie quarterback under a rookie contract because you really can't cut him until after the 2025 season. And even then, you're looking at a dead cap hit of around $31.2 million. So, it's going to hurt financially, but still, you got to win football games. So
I'm sorry, did you say the 2026 season?
After the 2026 season.
After the 2025 season, I believe you mean. But
yes.
But just to be clear, we are currently in 2022. And that is a long, long way away. You are stuck with Russell Wilson. You traded for him. You gave him a huge contract. You're stuck with him.
By the way, 2026, that's when the Bills plan on opening their new stadium. That's how far into the future that is.
That's it.
Russell Wilson could pay for with his new contract money if he wanted to.
Ouch. Should they name it after the Denver Broncos stadium in which the Buffalo Bills play in?
But now you could actually, what are we doing here?
I think Wilson turned this into a Russell Wilson conversation.
I know.
The trade deadline talk has gone straight to Russell Wilson.
We can still talk. I just brought up hypothetical.
Bryce Young for some reason.
But if we're talking about quarterbacks with this trade, I think it's more about the solidifying of Tua over the next few years because you're giving up 1st-round picks to now you're out of the quarterback conversation.
Yep.
You are telling us with all these deals now that you're shelling out away picks that Tua is your guy, unless you're going to go in free agency and do something like that. But all of these moves tell us that they're not going to go into the draft and take a quarterback. That's
a great point. It's crazy too because we're like literally just a year removed from the Dolphins being heavily involved in the Deshaun Watson stuff at the trade deadline before it all fell through.
And Tom Brady.
Sort of the belief that Brian Flores did. I don't think Brian Flores necessarily thought Tua was the guy. I mean, just based on what we've seen from Mike McDaniel and the GM, is it Greer?
Chris Greer.
Yeah, geez Louise. Based on that, it's very clear that it's if you read the tea leaves, it seems like he was the guy who liked Tua, or at least ownership liked Tua, and he was trying to stay in the same side as Stephen Ross. But you're right, Sully. It's a great point. They are all in on Tua now. And you look at those 3 first-round picks like that they got from the 49ers. I mean, man, wouldn't that be swell to have on San Francisco instead of with the Jimmy G instead of an injured Trey Lance? But
they got Christian McCaffrey and Jimmy G's making it work. I will say this.
I'm saying, like, if you could have drafted Jalen Waddle,
Yeah.
traded for Tyreek Hill, and traded for Bradley Chubb, and you would be really, really good.
Well, Sully mentioned Tua is now off the table for discussion because, they're rolling forward.
Sorry. By the way, I should point out, in that deal, Chase Edmonds went back to Denver, if we didn't mention that as well. And then the Dolphins traded for Jeff Wilson from the 49ers.
Yeah.
For like a condition, for like a 5th round pick, not conditional. Just I think
again, which makes me wonder is if Christian McCaffrey's worth it. Had a great game last week. If it continues to get to the Super Bowl, it's worth it. But Sully, you mentioned Tua is now off the table. They have Tyreek, and that leads me to my continuation of my fantastic theory that great wide receivers can make average quarterbacks better than average. Calvin Ridley is going to the
Jacksonville
Jacksonville
Brinson.
That was going to be my favorite.
Wilson, someone on Twitter wants to know how Devontae Adams fits into your theory.
Oh boy!
Up high, down.
I was asked to ask you that.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Because when I go down the list of quarterbacks pairing with wide receivers, that's the one I skim over very quickly because it has not worked out in any way, shape, or form.
Counterpoint. Derek Carr's not a young quarterback. He's a veteran, and he knows Devontae Adams. That's on you, bro. Not you, Wilson. That's on the quarterback and the scheme. And
I was going to blame Josh McDaniels, but sure, I'll go with that.
Aaron Rodgers would not young, but would like a word about whether Devontae Adams matters or not to an offense.
Maybe that's the outlier, Breech, because Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson. We talked about Tua. We talked about Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown.
Well, I think it's. This is actually Sully and I discussed this before, on Monday before you floated it. So really, it's like our theory, but we'll give it to you.
I was saying last week.
Mm-hmm. I think it's more of a young quarterback thing. Like, I don't think Justin Jefferson's just good, and he helps raise the floor for Kirk Cousins.
Herbie.
Yeah, sorry, I was reading it. Why are people talking about trading Kamara?
I don't know. So Steph Diggs, Josh Allen, and also some guy named Jamar Chase. Breech.
Right, but like the Diggs and the Tyreek Hill thing, to me, are like the two easiest examples of how trading for a number one receiver to help boost the production and the growth and development of your young quarterback is an accelerator. Whereas the opposite, as Sully and I got here because we were talking about Zach Wilson. Like Zach Wilson, it is a good what if, as Sully pointed out on Monday. Like, what happens if the Jets get Tyreek Hill and not the Dolphins? Like, where are Tua and Zach Wilson in their, various stages of development? If
that goes back to what Brady talked to you about. What if he didn't go to the Browns? I mean, that's a fair question. Circumstances.
Sure.
I mean, Sully, you'll admit Matt Patricia is killing my guy McCorkle Jones. I need something to happen where he doesn't throw 5 interceptions each and every freaking week.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
I mean, look at your boy Eugene. What's his middle name?
Cyril.
Eugene Cyril Smith,
the
third in Seattle, where
going dimes.
Carson Palmer's a great example when he got to Arizona and the fit with Bruce Arians. Like, fit and coaching and and situations matter in the NFL, particularly with quarterbacks and with young quarterbacks.
Yeah, but the Devontae Adams thing is a huge problem for this theory going forward. But I will mark that as an anomaly, not that.
Yeah, it's like that one little thing in a theory. Like, theory of relativity is great until you get down to string
the Devontae
theory,
Adams corollary,
right? And then it just falls apart a little bit, but it still works.
Well, and to put this theory together and then circle back to the Calvin Ridley stuff, which Sully was about to do. Sully's like, Jesus, guys, get on the rails, guys.
Trying to help out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so by the way, the conditions for the Calvin Ridley trade are wild. So the Jaguars get Calvin Ridley, and the Falcons get a 5th round pick in 2023. Can that 5th round pick become a 4th round pick, or is it just the 4th round pick that's conditional?
What I see from Rap Sheet is a 2023 5th rounder and then a 2024 2nd rounder. It doesn't mention
No. So in 2024, so the 2024 pick is a conditional 4th round pick. If Calvin Ridley is on the roster I believe next year for the Jaguars, if he makes the team in 2023, that 2024 4th round pick becomes a 2024 3rd round pick. If the Jaguars ink Calvin Ridley to a long-term deal, that 2024 3rd round pick becomes a 2024 2nd round pick. So very complex negotiation here because Calvin Ridley is suspended through at least the 2022 season for gambling on football. But if all works out, if it all works out perfectly and he inks a long-term deal in Jacksonville, the Falcons can parlay this into a second round pick. Get it?
What's that for? What's the dunk for?
I was just making like a
Parlay joke
No.
because Ridley suspended for a parlay that included a Falcons Jacksonville game.
Yeah,
I was just going to say, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that was the game.
What is happening here?
Well, I do like it. And Ashlyn Sullivan, who works for the Jaguars, just tweeted out the Jaguars have to finalize their trade for Calvin Ridley, who is eligible to petition for reinstatement to the NFL on February 15th. So he can't even do anything till February 15th. Just do
but that's why. So like the Jaguars are giving up a 5th and a 4th. That's why the conditions are attached. Like if he's not reinstated, he won't make the team. And then they just gave up a 5th and a 4th. But I'm not trying to be a pun here, but the gamble, it's a worthwhile gamble.
But here's what I was going to say. I was going to say is that this is actually worth it because you know what you have in Calvin Ridley as opposed to drafting a wide receiver who may not be as good as quickly. So in that sense, I like it. Like he's not coming in right now with Zay Jones and Evan Ingram and Christian Kirk, which actually would be helpful.
By the way, the Jaguars just announced the trade.
And those are the 3 leading receivers, all 3 newcomers. But he'll be there next year. He's basically going to be their first-round pick. He's a first-round talent. He's not as good as Justin Jefferson and Steph Diggs and the guys we've talked about, but he's probably the best wide receiver on that team when he's at 100%. And
probably.
I think,
it's easily the best wide receiver on the team. I think Calvin Ridley is a top 10 or 15 wide receiver in the league when he's healthy.
Well, yeah.
Only going to be 28 at the beginning of next year.
He's plenty healthy. He just can't play.
Yeah, sorry. When he's on the field and not
right
betting on his FanDuel account.
Zing.
You know what? Sometimes FanDuel can get you in trouble. Just saying. How about Chase Claypool being traded to the Chicago Bears? If you're a Steelers fan, I think you have to be feeling pretty good about that deal because the Bears, who previously traded Roquan Smith for a second-round pick from the Ravens, didn't even give the Steelers the Ravens second-round pick. They gave them the Bears second-round pick in 2023. I think that's my second favorite trade behind the Ridley trade. Not because it's like enticing. It's because it's like, what are you doing? Why would you give up your own second-round pick on a team that was like basically tanking the last 48 hours in order to acquire a wide receiver who like is been playing for 2.5 years, clearly not in a happy situation. And if this, I just find
he's not in an unhappy situation.
Okay.
Like he doesn't complain. Like he tries hard and, there's no mouthing off. Like Deontay Johnson, I would be more inclined to think is unhappy. I mean, he's the one that was yelling and screaming at Mr. Trubisky and Trubisky got benched a few weeks ago at halftime. But the issue, I agree with the part that the Steelers made out in this trade, like gangbusters. Steelers typically have a pretty good history of knowing when to part ways with wide receivers. That said, this is only the third season, 2.5 seasons in for Claypool. And my issue with Claypool, who scored 9 touchdowns as a rookie, I think he only had 2 last year, is that he 6'4" and he plays like he's 5'10", and it drives me absolutely crazy that he doesn't make.
I know that feeling.
Catch down the field. Right, he looks like Brady Quinn and he plays like John Breech. That's the problem. But I think it's a good move. Like I don't mind the Bears mildly overpaying if Claypool looks more like year 1 than he does year 2. And I think that he gives Justin Fields a huge target in the middle of the field. He's clearly their best wide receiver right now. I know Joe Musso, our buddies, who's a huge Bears fan, is excited because now it allowed Darnell Mooney to do more things underneath. And in theory, yes. Go ahead.
I don't think that the in a vacuum that the acquisition of Chase Claypool by the Bears is a bad thing. I think it's a very good thing. He'll help Justin Fields. But the price to me was just a little bit too much.
What are you giving up?
A second round pick?
No, what are you, Will Brinson, GM, giving up?
Not a second round pick? I would do it for a third.
Well, clearly the two sides agreed otherwise. I mean, there may have been competition. No, my point is that if there's competition, you can offer whatever you want. If it's not what the Steelers want, they're not going to make the deal.
Okay, they gave up too much. Like the Steelers drafted Chase Claypool with the 49th overall pick 2.5 years ago. They were going to get a better pick. Like you wouldn't go buy a used car for the same price it was 2.5 years ago.
You would if you don't have a way to get home. That's the point. Like they don't have a way to get home right now. Chase Claypool is the Honda Civic, the 1998 Honda Civic that will get them home.
That's not a good reason to overpay.
Okay, I'm not convinced they overpay. That's all I'm saying. You are. That's fine. We'll see.
Okay, pretty easily convinced.
Sorry,
right.
What do you think? You look you're smarter than the rest of us.
Why don't we're gonna let's it's 4:00. Trade deadline is hit. We got another trade that we got to get to. Came at the last minute, and we'll discuss it right after we take a break and reboot the podcast next. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Pick Six Podcast, CBS Sports Daily NFL Podcast. I am Robert Williams Brinson, your host. I'm from High Point, North Carolina. Live in Raleigh. Joining me, three very good friends to break down the NFL trade deadline show from Syracuse, New York. A long-time NFL writer and a man with a tattoo. 2 tattoos, actually. Ryan Wilson from Nashville, Tennessee. Wearing a white hoodie. Formerly of, I don't know, maybe a paper in Georgia or something. John Breech. And all the way from Boston. A lifelong Patriots fan. A man who would ditch his fiance for $6 million. Tyler Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully. How are we doing, guys?
What's going on?
I'm doing well.
No one got traded. No one on the podcast got traded. Thought I was going to get traded to a different podcast today.
Right. I did for a few minutes today, actually. Anywho, it's Pick Six Podcast, trade deadline day. We got a bunch of trades to get to. Easily the wildest NFL trade deadline day in league history. It's just an inarguable, concrete fact based on all the different things that went on throughout the day. We had Bradley Chubb traded, TJ Hockenson traded, Nyheim Hines traded. My guy Nyheim Hines, straight out of Garner, North Carolina, baby. From the Colts.
Nice.
We'll get to that in just a minute. I will ask you all first. We'll ask you first, Sully. What was the most surprising trade for you, and/or what was your favorite trade?
Most surprising was the Calvin Ridley trade to Jacksonville. My favorite was Bradley Chubb going to the Miami Dolphins. So whichever one you guys want to dive into, those two.
I think the Ridley one is like kind of crazier because I just don't ever recall a suspended player, a player suspended for gambling being traded in the middle of his suspension. But I do think the Chubb trade is probably the bigger one.
Yeah.
The Dolphins give up a first-round pick for him, which Sully now concludes their business with the 49ers with those 3 first-round picks, right?
I mean, you look at what they were able to get out of those picks when they traded up for Trey Lance. You collect a package for Jalen Waddle. You partially get it with Tyreek Hill, and now you're sending partially to get Bradley Chubb. So those are 3 pillars to your offense and defense. I just can't imagine like a more impressive return when it's collectively looked back at. You couldn't have hit this any better if you were the Miami Dolphins in terms of what you got in return for this deal.
I tend to agree with you. And the full deal for Bradley Chubb, Wilson, involves Chubb going to Miami for a 2023 first-round pick, a San Francisco pick, obviously, which if you're Miami, it's like a risk-free. You're not giving away your future first. You're giving away San Fran's future first, which, if your team falls apart, you don't feel bad about it or as bad about it. A 2024 fourth-round pick and running back Chase Edmonds in exchange for Bradley Chubb, who presumably the Dolphins are going to give a lot of money to over the next 6 months.
Yeah, and they also got Jeff Wilson from the 49ers and, days after they got Christian McCaffrey. So it's getting the band back together from San Francisco for Mike McDaniel on the one hand, adding an edge rusher and Bradley Chubb on another. And Breech, how much better are the Dolphins in terms of how many games behind are they of the Bills in the division, and are they the second best team in that division far and away?
They're 2 games behind the Bills, tied with the New York.
No. In terms of what does this move do for you in terms of where
this moves them much closer?
Thank you, NFL.com/standings.
Well, I thought I was going to go from how many games they are behind and whether or not they could catch them. So if you let me finish instead of interrupting Brinson, I could get to my ultimate points. But yes, so they are 2 games behind the Buffalo Bills in the standings. And you're asking, does this make up those 2 games? Is Bradley Chubb worth that? And I'm not sure they can make up the 2 games because the Bills are so good. But what I think this move does is it makes them a much more viable contender in the postseason. Because look, if you want to beat Patrick Mahomes, if you want to beat Josh Allen, you only have to beat him once. You got to get after the quarterback. And so now that you have Bradley Chubb, the Dolphins did not have a great pass rush. You throw Chubb in there, that makes everyone else better because teams are going to start focusing on Chubb. And if you can cause problems for Mahomes, if you can cause problems for Allen, that makes those teams much more beatable in the playoffs. So this might not be enough to get them over the hump to win the division, but I certainly think it gives them a better chance to at winning the Super Bowl.
So our guy Stephen O. Sportsline sent out the simulations, and Miami goes from 9.1 wins to 9.4 wins with Bradley Chubb in their division. The chances of winning the division goes from 1.8% to 2.4%. So basically what you said in terms of numbers there, Breech. I think that's right. And I think the issue is once you get into the playoffs, it's all about one game. And Bradley Chubb gets 2 sacks in a strip sack fumble. He's worth it. They get you to the next round of the playoffs.
It is telling, by the way, I think that their chances, Sully, improved 0.6 to win the division, but 0.5 to win the Super Bowl. Like usually it is the total opposite way, but that's just the nature of being in the same division as the Bills. The playoff percentage is only jumped 3.9%, which is, I would say, maybe a little bit low. The fact that Chubb is worth 0.3 wins when is pretty good.
Yeah, and so something that we were talking about too before this show, we did a pre-show coming up before the deadline, is that this is a big picture topic for the Dolphins, but it is telling that they are all in now on Tua Tagovailoa, giving up away all of these first-round picks. The fact that they are going all in from what they've seen from him so far, I don't think should be overlooked here for this deadline. Obviously, Bradley Chubb, the addition of him is huge. It's going to help them this season, but long-term for this team, they're telling us that they're not going into the draft to grab another quarterback. Tua Tagovailoa is their guy outside of maybe swinging something crazy in the offseason for a trade for a veteran. But what we've seen so far, this seems to be Tua's team going forward. It feels like this is kind of one of those solidifying things to say that he has sold them going forward as their franchise guy.
Let me ask you this. Who makes a bigger impact this season the rest of the way for the Dolphins? Jeff Wilson or Bradley Chubb?
I think Chubb.
I would say Bradley Chubb, but I don't think your thought process in asking the question is crazy because Jeff Wilson knows the system, good runner, explosive. We'll probably we'll have a package of plays he's ready to get in immediately. I think Wilson can be an impact guy, but he's still not starting ahead of Mostert.
It's probably a 50-50 tandem at best, right? I mean,
yeah, probably 60. I think it'll probably be. Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert were on the Niners with Mike McDaniel when he was the run game coordinator and offensive coordinator. So probably just look at those splits and that will tell us exactly what we're going to see.
Or you just play the hot hand because Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle are the main weapons in this offense. So it's just, hey, we're going to ride at running back, whoever looks good. And Mostert has looked really good this season. But, it's nice to have a guy like Wilson who can walk right in and understands McDaniel's system and should be able to jump in there right away.
Sorry, I was so Brandon Cook's not traded. I was just looking at a tweet that he just sent out after the trade deadline passed about 5 minutes ago. This is official Brandon Cooks with the check mark. You have to pay $8 a month for that. Don't take a man's kindness for granted. Covered for the lies for too long. Those days are done. Cross the line with playing with my career. Oh my, that is certainly an interesting take from the Texans wide receiver who didn't get traded.
Yeah, notable that he didn't get traded. Cam Akers also not traded. It's kind of, curious to see what's going to happen with both those guys. I don't think that they would get released, but I guess if Brandon Cooks goes like scorched earth on the Houston Texans, then I don't know, maybe.
Well, listen,
I don't know what the money is, but that's something.
And while we're talking not trading, we'll get to the Bears trading for Chase Claypool in a second. The team that didn't acquire anybody, the Green Bay Packers. Ryan, you wanted them to give up 3 first-rounders for Will Fuller 2 years ago.
I know. He's still available, by the way.
Oh, actually, he retired, so he's not.
No, you can retire. You can put the retirement papers in the shredder and get back to it.
That's true. Will Fuller could come back and save the Packers.
I don't know. I say this all the time. When fans realize that the front office and coaching staff are not doing the things necessary to be successful, that to me, that's why there's so much frustration with fan bases. And the Packers have historically been really good, and the wheels are coming off in real time, and they're basically on axles right now, but still grinding their way towards the cliff that they're going to invariably go over in weeks, perhaps sooner. So I don't know what the thinking is. I don't know why you wouldn't try to trade for one of these wide receivers. I have no rational explanation for why they wouldn't do it. Just the same way I have no rational explanation why in the deepest draft class in the last 500 years they traded up for Jordan Love. But here we are. So I don't know if Aaron Rodgers gives a crap at this point. Maybe he doesn't. I would imagine if he's tuned in at all, he's not happy about it. But again, what are you going to do?
Well, and there were reports that they were in play for Chase Claypool. And imagine the Packers getting outbid by the Chicago Bears. I mean,
I was going to say, do we think has it been reported that that's what happened? Is the Bears had to cough up their own second-round pick to go get Chase Claypool?
I mean, that would explain why, you thought they overpaid.
Oh, yeah, we haven't even talked about that. So I mean, just to reset it for the actual podcast, Chase Claypool to the Chicago Bears for Chicago's second-round pick, and was there a fifth in there too? Was there four? Was it just a second? I felt like there was one more.
I thought it was just a second. It was confusing.
Just a second.
Okay.
Because there was thought that they may be giving up I forget.
There were conflicting reports.
Yeah.
So Roquan Smith traded from Chicago to Baltimore. A second round pick was included in that deal. And there were conflicting reports out there about which second rounder was going to the Steelers in exchange for Chase Claypool. It is the Bears' actual second round pick, which in my opinion is way too much to give up for a player like Chase Claypool, who's 2.5 years into his rookie deal and will be looking to get paid this offseason. Ryan, do you disagree?
No, I don't disagree with any of that. But I mean, in terms of, he's going to be looking to get paid. But he's in year 3. He has one more year left.
Do you think the Bears overpaid or no?
No, I don't. And I don't think they overpaid because they have a huge need there. He's now the best player on that team. Breech mentioned there was competition from the Packers potentially, and that potentially changed why it wasn't the Ravens second rounder ended up being their own second rounder because they had to up the price to get him. And I would imagine, there have been talks of Chase Claypool being traded for 10 days now. So this isn't a surprise that more than one team may have potentially been in the running for him. Are the Bears better today than they were 2 hours ago? Yeah, they are better. Offensively anyway. And, the talk in the offseason was, well, they drafted 2 defensive backs with their first 2 picks. They didn't have a first-round pick. That's great, but Justin Fields is the loser in that situation, and that sort of bared itself out over the first 2 months of the season. I think now he's playing better. The offense seems to be trying to amplify what Justin Fields does best, and now he has someone to throw the ball to who's above 5'8". Those are all wins in my book.
And we just talked about Brandon Cooks. Do you think he's literally reading the NFL rulebook right now, trying to figure out if he can trade himself to the Packers? Because that would have solved a lot of problems for everyone.
Well, the great thing about Brandon Cooks is this is the only way he'll be able to play for every single NFL team. He can't stay more than 18 months in one location. He's got to get in and out of there. So I understand his being upset about this.
The thing about Justin Fields, too, I do feel like his play over the last few weeks is almost being rewarded here. He is showing over these last couple of games. I was in Foxborough when he destroyed the Patriots. He's playing really well right now. He was surprising to me seeing him live, how impressive he was, moving with his legs, throwing on the run, things that I didn't think that he was really, capable of doing at the NFL level. And it was, the takeaway from it was, wow, if they had some weapons with over $100 million in salary cap space this offseason, they could really build something around him. I don't know if they need to go into the draft to get a quarterback or anything along those lines. And so now at least you're starting that building process of building an offense. Yeah, maybe that second round pick's a little high because your record's not going to be that good. So that second round pick's going to be relatively high. But at the same time, I do think, very similar to what we were saying about Tua, this move is almost a stamp of approval for what they've seen from Justin Fields so far.
Yeah, and look, I want to be clear. I like the idea of going out and getting help for Justin Fields. I have said repeatedly throughout this offseason and early in the season that the Bears and Ryan Poles, their first-year GM, and Matt Eberflus, their coach to a degree too, have done a disservice to Justin Fields by not acquiring anything, by not signing anybody, by not trading for anybody on offense. Like their biggest offseason investment on offense was Velus Jones Jr. in the second round. And I understand they didn't have a ton of picks. I like going to get Claypool. I think he's a good fit across from Mooney and with what Justin Fields does and sort of the style that he plays with. I think they gave up too much for him.
But they wouldn't have gotten him if they didn't give up what they gave up.
That is
true.
Probably fair.
Well, I guess my question would be
if
about
they've
the whole
taken the
thing.
Ravens second round pick, that'd be a lot more palatable.
Well, Will, my question would be, would you have liked it better if they traded that second round pick for Brandon Cooks?
No, I would. Claypool is better than Cooks.
So you'd rather. So it's not necessarily.
Just that's an age and production.
Right. So, but I'm saying, like, out of the wide receivers that I guess were available at the deadline, he was the best one, right?
Yeah, like getting Claypool is a good move in a vacuum for the Bears. But it is very likely that you're going to end up giving away a better pick than the one used to actually select Claypool 2.5 years ago, which to me is just bad math and bad process in terms of what you want to see from your general manager and how they evaluate picks and et cetera. Like, I don't know who I saw a tweet out there too that was like, here are the second round receivers taken in the last 2 years. How many would you take over Claypool? And that's a fair point, but I think I want the second. I want if I'm the Bears and I'm trading away Roquan Smith and Robert Quinn, and very clearly like putting on the tank shoes. I want my second round.
I don't
pick.
think they are putting on the tank shoes. Sully just talked about the ass whooping he witnessed in person.
That was just the spirit of George Hallis coming in and Papa Bear refusing to let Belichick break his record on Monday.
All right, let me ask you that. I think sometimes, and I'm guilty of this too, hanging on to draft picks too
But
long.
why make a trade for Claypool and give up a second round pick if you're tanking?
That's right. That's what I'm saying.
Because you're an idiot.
I mean, you rarely see a team that is both buying and selling at the trade deadline. Somehow,
you rarely see a team that is giving away a superstar defensive player in Roquan Smith for a worse pick than what they are giving for what they're giving up to get Chase Claypool, who is.
That's not necessarily uncommon.
I would say it's fairly uncommon.
Chase Claypool is in year 2.5. He's had a fantastic rookie season, so you know what he can do. Joe Musso has entered the chat. He wants to know what the call-in number is.
Musso can jump in here if he wants.
He has to defend his honor.
Send him the link, Billy, if he's not on.
But I like, what does Chase Claypool need to do for you in order for this trade to be worth it? Because I feel like you don't know what you're getting when you enter. Velus Jones was a second-round pick, and he's had a rough go of it. He can't catch punts. He's not doing anything offensively. Claypool, you've seen him have success. So what are you looking for?
Velus Jones literally cost them a game in the Commanders when he muffed the punt. And then
Claypool threw a left-handed touchdown last week. That's all I'm saying.
Would you rather have a guy who can throw a left-handed touchdown or a guy who muffs punts? That seems like...
Well, tell me production-wise over the next 2 months, what does Claypool need to do for you to be okay with this?
The pick needs to not be in like the top 5 of the second round for me to be a top 10.
No, Claypool's production. What do you need from the next 10 games or whatever? How many games have left?
I don't care. I don't know. Like,
no, well, I mean, you're.
I don't think that
against the move.
Well, I mean, are the Bears trying to win this year?
Yeah, I would say yes.
I would say
only
no.
A game.
You can't trade Roquan Smith and then say you're trying to win this year.
Roquan Smith didn't want to be there, and they weren't going to extend him. That's the reality.
Well, you would get a third round compensatory pick for him when he left anyway.
He may have been unhappy, and that may have been sort of. I don't know the details, but I'm just speculating. Like, there are reasons to get rid of players. So do you want to keep that guy around? Is all I'm saying.
You're the Bears. You're only a game out of
win this year. Yes,
you're only a game out of the final wild card spot right now. There's no reason in a NFL where most teams are just mediocre, just exactly average. There's no reason you can't compete.
And like I was saying too, Fields has been playing at a high level over these last few weeks. They are like, all right, let's it's not like they're buying for just this season, right? It's not like this dude's going to be a free agent this offseason. He is under team control through next year. You have a bunch of cap space. I don't think he's going to be, yes, he is going to be the number one for this team, but I don't think he's a legit number one wide receiver for an offense. But at the same time, you do have to help Justin Fields at some point, right? Why not get some rapport now going into next year? Again, I'm with you that the price is high. I think everybody would have liked it much better if it was the pick that they got back from the Ravens. But if that's the price, that's the price.
Musso with the old, I don't want to talk to Brinson in person, so I'm just going to share my comment.
What did he say?
He said, Claypool's deal justifies this deal. He's not played at that level, but he fits the need. This is a 2023 move. Why wait till the draft to start rebuilding?
What do you think about that?
I think that he's saying that this team is rebuilding and not playing to win this year.
So are you okay with the move in that?
No,
What?
I'm not okay with giving up a high second round pick for Chase Claypool.
But
I
wait a
think-
second. If they go 8 and 9, that's not a high second round pick. It's a middle of the road second round pick.
Okay. They gave up too much for Chase Claypool.
Okay.
That is my stance. I think they're tanking because I don't think you trade Roquan Smith if you're not tanking. And so I think the Bears are tanking and gave up a high second round pick for a receiver who has a year and a half left on his rookie deal and doesn't have a 5th-year option available because he was a second round pick. And
Well, they got a second round pick for Roquan who has a half a year left in his deal.
So it's like they traded Roquan Smith. They were going to lose Roquan Smith anyway. That's the thing. So it's like, why not just get something in return? And they got a 2nd-round pick, a 5th-round pick, and a player.
but
And our
your suggestion
boss-
is that they're playing to win this year.
Our
Well-
boss Eric K says draft picks are overrated. Worth noting, he is a Washington Commanders fan, so he has some expertise in that arena.
Okay. But then
I agree with EK and the Rams. I
But then
think-
your point about Roquan Smith doesn't make any sense either. Like, why are you trading Roquan Smith for draft picks if they're so overrated?
but they're also adding Chase Claypool and giving up a draft pick.
Would you trade? Okay, whatever. We're going to move on from this. I think it's a bad trade. If he's awesome all year long, if he catches 1,000, has 1,000 receiving yards for the rest of the way home, you guys could dunk on me all you want. Giving up a high second round pick for Chase Claypool is too much.
Let's revisit this conversation in 3 years. So mark it down.
Or 3 months.
3 months.
Whatever. Let's
3
take a break. When we come back, will Nyheim Hines be getting a Super Bowl ring in the near future? We'll tell you next. Some running back trades. We mentioned Jeff Wilson to the 49ers, Chase Edmonds from the Dolphins to the Broncos along in the Bradley Chubb deal. And at the last minute, my boy, Nyheim Hines, straight out of Garner, gets shipped from the location known as Indianapolis to the best team in football, the Buffalo Bills. What a win for Nyheim Hines.
And a loss for Zach Moss.
Yes, Zach Moss traded from Buffalo to Indianapolis.
So here's my question. And Bills fans got extremely angry at me for saying that James Cook was basically a reach with a 2nd-round pick, going back to the 2nd-round pick conversation. They wanted to use him like Christian McCaffrey. I get that. It hasn't quite worked out yet. It certainly could. But they were in the Christian McCaffrey conversation reportedly 10 days, 2 weeks ago, whenever that was. And now they've traded for Nyheim Hines, who does similar things. Where are we on James Cook?
Depth piece? I don't know at this point, right? I mean, he looked good in the passing game last week, but other than that, nothing that crazy. But this is a role that they've been looking at for a long time. You talk about Christian McCaffrey, but go back to the offseason. This team was trying to get J.D. McKissick, and it felt like they got him for a second. Then they somehow ended up back with the Commanders. And so they clearly feel like they have a need here. And whether James Cook was filling it or not, in short spurts, they felt like they needed some more consistency there. And now you're adding that piece, that type of pass catching piece to this offense. I mean, even Devin Singletary was catching like 5 passes a game, it felt like, for the last few weeks here. You add now a more proven piece like Nyheim Hines. Again, just another dangerous weapon in that Buffalo Bills offense.
I love the move for the Bills. Like there was buzz about them being maybe in on Christian McCaffrey. And obviously I'm not going to suggest that Nyheim Hines is as good as Christian McCaffrey, but for the relative price, I think it's a very smart move for Buffalo. They have Devin Singletary's had really nice spurts this season. James Cook is a rookie, and you have Hines, who is just a dynamic pass catching back that can run between the tackles, and you can split out and sort of move around. So I'm probably higher on Nyheim Hines than most people, and because I'm biased for where am I pointing? Obviously, oh no,
He's got the jacket on.
Long-time listener, first-time caller.
What's up,
Joe
Joe?
from Claypool. I got a couple things for the guys.
What's up, man? How you doing?
Nothing. Just had to chime in. Came in on the tail end of the conversation.
First. Now you're an official friend of the podcast.
I expect.
Don't tell him that he's going to hang up.
Nobody
Yeah,
promos this podcast harder than me on our air.
I know
I'll
you
just get out in front of that right
are
here.
truly a friend of the podcast, but by making an appearance, you are now classified as a friend of the podcast.
It is a distinction I'm quite proud of. couple things on all of the above here, Will. It is an overpay. There's no question about that. As I wrote in the chat where I live here on Sundays, the ceiling that you're hoping for justifies it. But I'll ask you the question of and Tom Fornelli, I'll steal this from him. Can we speak out of both sides of our mouth here and chastise the front office for not, in their first go at a draft, not addressing what their quarterback needs and sort of leaving that dangling of whether or not this is going to be the guy? This is an admission that Justin Fields is the franchise quarterback of the Chicago Bears. That is a step forward in that locker room. That's worth something.
Sure.
The talent that you're putting on that offense with Justin Fields and that skill set that's going to make everything easier for not just Justin Fields, but for Darnell Mooney. We've talked about it a million times before. Darnell Mooney would be a fabulous number 2 to someone's number 1. Is Chase Claypool a bona fide number 1? It's what he was drafted to be. Is he that right now? Not yet. But a strong physical deep threat with a fast, prototypical 2022 wide receiver underneath it. It's not something that Bears fans have been privy to ever. I think this is so exciting. And would I have loved it to have been the Ravens pick? Yes. But it's not. And it is an overpay. You got to pay to play. And I believe that this is the start of the rebuild. We weren't going to wait until next April to start rebuilding this football team. This gives you 9 more games of continuity with Chase Claypool and Justin Fields. I'm leaning into the positive here because it's too easy to be negative as a Bears fan.
So, Joe, someone in the comment asked, and they don't know the backstory to the orange coat. So you have to give us a full view look and then explain what's going on there.
So right about now, outdoors becomes unbearable in Chicago. So this is a double-lined, see me in the north end zone during the extra point jacket. You don't miss me on TV if I'm in that end zone and I have this jacket on. Because there's orange, obviously, in the crowd.
Look at this. I could sell water to a fish.
Not this orange.
I know. I'm like, I'd like to chip in a second-round pick to get Chase Claypool here now.
I've only come to sell Will Brinson.
I do think that the Fields thing matters because we've talked about this a bunch of the show where this offseason you sort of felt like does the new regime like Justin Fields? They didn't get him anything except Velus Jones Jr. this offseason. So again, getting Claypool in a vacuum, I think he does have upside. Justin Fields needs some help. He's a guy too with the freelancing sort of playground style you think could work with what Fields does well. I think they gave up too much in terms of the pick. And I'm worried that when you see what polls did this offseason and then you couple it with an overpay right at the trade deadline, that you have to at least have your antenna up in a Ryan Pacey kind of way, that maybe he's not entirely schooled in the competency of being a general manager.
Where I will push back there is that Ryan Pace, his activity came on draft day and felt knee-jerk. Yes, This is close to another flag in the ground moment. We're talking about the trade deadline where maybe you are overpaying, maybe you are overreacting, but this is, this in a way feels proactive and not reactive. It's proactive to the need. It's addressing the need, and it's not getting fleeced out of picks that you didn't need to move anyway. I just think that this is the step forward for Fields, for the offense, for the franchise to start saying, and I guess the thing that bothered me, what you guys are talking about, is the tank. Yes, you want that first round pick to be as high as it's going to be because you have so many needs to address here, but painting with a broad brush, talk about I'll defer to your guys' expertise here on the talent pool right now coming in 2023. How many of those needs can we successfully address with 2 picks, 3 picks in the first 60 picks of the draft if the Ravens are going to be really good? You give one of those picks away, you address one of those needs right now. Is the talent pool, are you going to get 2 surefire guys at, let's say, 8 and then early second, late second? I just think proven asset over pick is sort of the thought process that your Los Angeles Rams have ushered into this era of the NFL. Will Brinson,
F them picks is what you're saying. I can't speak to the nature of the wide receivers coming into that would be available in the second round. Obviously, that's tough to do. Anyway. Yeah. I do want to. People were like, well, look at the second round receivers taken in the last 2 years. You're definitely taking Chase Claypool over them. And this is where I would say, well, let's that's a short sample size. Let's go back to 2020, right? T. Higgins, Michael Pittman. You got DeAndre Swift, Jonathan Taylor also taken there. Laviska Shenault, not great. Cole Kmet, also taken in that draft in the second round by the Bears. Actually, 5 or 6 picks before the Steelers took Chase Claypool. Jalen Hurts in that second round. Yeah.
So this is where, and I think not to turn this into a Bears podcast, I'll let you guys get on with
It's
your.
already there, Musso. It's already there.
But this is where player development becomes the actual issue at the NFL level. We just assume that all of these buildings operate at a high level because it's NFL football. It's not how it works. And the Bears building has been the exception to that rule. We now have to trust not in the players, but in those that have to develop the players. So I think that you could do the revisionist history thing and look at all of those names. I mean, connect them to the coaches that are coaching them. And I think there's the answer to your question. But continue to do the Lord's work, fellas. We appreciate what you do here on the Pick Six podcast. Thank you for a moment. And it's always bear down.
Thanks, Musso, for stopping by. You're the man, buddy.
Love you guys.
See you soon.
Guy's an evangelist.
I know. I mean, yeah, we had like the chat's like, I mean, not that the chat turning on me is unusual, but it's like they're like,
the whole chat turned into Bears fans.
I know. All right, let's move on. We talked. I mean, Hines. We talked about Claypool. We talked about the one deal that we sort of glossed over in this just trade deadline. TJ Hockenson, and we're not glossing over it. It's a huge trade. It was sort of the earliest one, where it's like, oh my god, that makes the day right there. Hawkinson from the Detroit Lions and the Minnesota Vikings. And then everything kept, unraveling in terms of craziness. Hawkinson goes to a division rival, which is kind of crazy. Breech.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the most surprising part of this deal is that I don't know what the Vikings and Lions are now best friends and not division rivals anymore because they made a trade in the draft where it felt like the Lions trade up to get Jamison Williams. And it felt like probably they got the better end of that deal. But this one, it feels like the Vikings got the better end of the deal. And the Lions are waving the white flag on the season. Like, imagine being a Lions fan where you've waved the white flag on every season for about the past 50 years, and you're already doing it again. And maybe Hockenson, you get rid of him now because you don't want to sign him to a big extension. But then you're also saying that we made a bad draft pick, which they seem to do often. But if you're the Vikings, man, now you add TJ Hockenson to Justin Jefferson to Dalvin Cook. I mean, the offense was already pretty loaded. And now this is basically Kevin O'Connell and the front office saying, all right, Kirk, we are putting this on your back. Don't screw this up. We got you all the weapons you need. So go get us a Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's funny. I'll be interested to hear what you think about the compensation in terms of good or bad, Brinson. But I'll just say this first. My buddy Michael David Smith, who we used to work with, is now at Pro Football Talk. He's a longtime Lions fan, and he tweeted this out 3 hours ago right after the trade. The multi-decade rebuilding cycle for the Lions alternates between telling the fans they have to be patient because they have good players who will just need time to develop, and telling fans they have to be patient because they traded away those players for draft picks. And that is what it is to be a Lions fan. And it doesn't appear to be. It feels like they're spinning their wheels, and the only thing that changes are the faces. It's like a conveyor belt of faces, and you're in the same place.
Well, I mean, you're coming off the past couple of days here, too, where you're firing your defensive backs head coach or your defensive backs coach. Now you're trading TJ Hockenson, one of the faces to your offense, former top pick. At a certain point, if you keep losing here, too, you're probably going to see a total change of the guard.
Yeah,
here.
I'm changing my tune on Dan Campbell. When he had to fire a coach and he was a defensive backs coach, and they're trading away Hawk.
It feels like this team is knocking on the door of a total rip down and rebuild. And, you're getting all these picks and acquiring all these assets to now try to potentially, you would assume, right, have the capabilities of moving around the draft board and maybe get a quarterback. So now you're talking about potentially moving on from Jared Goff and doing that whole thing. So
would you say, Sully, that the Lions are tanking more than the Bears?
it's a tank off in the NFC North. That's what it is.
The Lions are just bad.
At this point, I think it's just
it's a lot for the Vikings to give up. But like the Vikings are 6-1 and just put Irv Smith on injured reserve and don't have that elite tight end that they want for that offense, and so they're able to get it from a division rival. I don't like giving up a second round pick. It's a bet. If you're a 6-1, giving away a second round pick and leading the division is better than giving away a second round pick. If you're 3-5, and you're and you've traded away some of your best defensive players.
You also have to look at the context a little bit too, though. I mean, the Vikings, we all kind of pegged them as a potential team to take a leap this year, but, pegging them to potentially do it and them actually doing it are two different things. It's a down year for the Green Bay Packers. They do not look like they are going to make much of an impact. They are finally saying, hey, guys, this could be our year. Let's go for it. Let's not sit on the sidelines and all of a sudden say, yeah, this is good enough. You never know what the Packers could do this offseason. You never know what could happen. They could be right back in this thing next year. You're 6-1. You feel like you're just a piece away. You just lost your tight end, as you said. Well, yeah, let's go for it. You never know what can happen with Philadelphia. You never know what can happen with Dallas or San Francisco. Put yourself in the conversation. And like Breech is saying, let's see if Kirk Cousins can do it. Because if we're going to get our answer. They have a great record. They're going to be probably the division leader. They're going to have a home playoff game. We're going to know whether or not, good or bad, Kirk Cousins can thrive with what seems to be the ideal situation around him.
You also, with the Hockenson situation, you have his 5th-year option next year, which transfers over via trade. You have the ability to franchise tag him. And I would guess, I would just, and look, the same thing hopefully applies to the Bears here too. And the Dolphins with Bradley Chubb. Like if you give up a first or second round pick for a young player and don't sign him to an extension, then that's really questionable. I mean, obviously you would think Chicago's has plans for that with Claypool this offseason when he's eligible, or maybe the season after that. I would guess the same thing is true with the Vikings here. Like, I think TJ Hawkinson's freaking awesome. And, to me, getting him to pair with Justin Jefferson, you have Adam Thielen there who's been a little banged up in recent years too. It gives you a lot of depth. Or not a lot of depth. It gives you a lot more star power at that position than you even had with Irv Smith. I don't mind the deal as much as I mind the Claypool deal.
Yeah, I like them both. I like them both for both teams, actually. I think what MDS said about the Lions is 100% true, and that's no grand revelation. It's hard to figure out what they're doing. High hopes for them coming into the season because, like you, I was buying into Dan Campbell, but the defense stinks. They make so many stupid plays offensively at the worst times. I am interested, Sully, whether Jared Goff is going to be the guy or not, because he has exceeded my expectations coming from LA on this Lions team. But there are moments where you're like, okay, can anyone win here? So I don't know what their plan is with all these draft picks. I don't know when they're going to get better because it feels like they're stuck in Groundhog Day. And I just have no answers. Like, I think Jared Goff could probably start somewhere else too. He would be an upgrade for, 10 teams just off the top of my head. But man, I don't know how you fix this team. Breech, how do you fix a terrible football team that's been historically bad forever? You have some history with that.
Well, you have to get lucky with a quarterback. Then you have to pick that quarterback's college teammate wide receiver. And then that's where you start.
Okay.
And so the Lions aren't anywhere near that. And that's the thing, is that the Lions are stuck in this weird football purgatory where if you're their front office and you're sitting there in February saying to yourself, man, do we keep Jared Goff or do we let him go? And you bring a new guy in and he's not as good as Goff. Then you're just back where you started, except you have a guy in a rookie contract, which is nice. So maybe you can add some pieces around him. And so it is a huge risk. And the Lions have proven over and over and over that they're not good at making these decisions. And it's just, no matter who's in charge there, they just keep making boneheaded decisions. So I don't know how you start the rebuild of the Lions, but obviously the quarterback is the most important position in the NFL. So you got to start there and figure out whether you're riding Goff forward or you're trying to cut ties with him in the near future.
Pimping ain't easy, Breech.
It ain't.
Sure. All right. The Lions are just, it would be frustrating to be a Lions fan. Calvin Ridley. Did we talk about we need to talk about Calvin Ridley in full, right? God.
We talked about it on the pre-game.
Oh, the pre-podcast. See, I
Pre-podcast.
don't know what's real and what's not. It's like the Matrix.
Yeah, exactly. Calvin Ridley, suspended for the 2022 season, traded to the Jacksonville Jaguars by the Atlanta Falcons in what is, I think, a pretty good gamble. Turns out the Falcons can actually parlay.
These jokes didn't work. These jokes didn't work on the pregame, and you're going right back to
boo, my lord, boo.
Look, hey, the pregame show is just a teaser, okay?
I'm going to hang up.
3 in a row was impressive.
No, but it would be rude to hang up in the middle of the podcast. The Calvin Ridley trade was Calvin Ridley to the Jaguars, and in exchange, this is very complicated, so hold tight. I'm not kidding. In exchange for a 2023 fifth round pick and a 2024 fourth round pick with multiple conditions attached to it. If Ridley makes the roster, is on the team in Jacksonville in 2023, that 2024 fourth rounder becomes a third round pick. And if the Jaguars ink Calvin Ridley to a long-term deal, which I'm sure there are conditions to that too, that pick then becomes a second round pick. So if Ridley is on the roster and signs a contract with Jacksonville, the Falcons can get a second round pick in 2024, which is really, really intriguing. We're not even guaranteed, Sully, that Ridley's going to play in 2023, although one would think that he hasn't been betting on FanDuel this entire season.
Suspension.
One would hope that could get him in a lot of trouble.
And the most hilarious part about it is the game that he gambled on was against the Jaguars with
Falcons
Falcons.
Jaguars game so
It's
weird.
just it's just the perfect trade all the way around. I mean, I like it from a Jaguars perspective. I really don't know how you can't, because you're talking about adding someone who I think is going to be like a legitimate top wide receiver in the league. You know, I don't know if you want to call him top 10, top 15, whatever you want to call it, but he's someone who you could slot in and make life tremendously easier for Trevor Lawrence. And we talk about these young quarterbacks and how we want them to develop. Well, adding a legit wide receiver to their offenses, we've seen help them tremendously. And so when you have a guy like Calvin Ridley, when he's on the field, we all thought that he was going to be someone who projects to be a legit starting guy. So for me, I think it's great. I think he pairs pretty well with what they have already. And if you're talking about the development of Trevor Lawrence, this is a move that you're going to have for the next few years. Obviously, it doesn't matter right now. So ultimately, I'm a huge fan of it.
Yeah, I agree. The three guys they acquired this offseason, Zay Jones, Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, are the three leading receivers on the team. And I think next in line will be Calvin Ridley.
Doesn't it like the pecking order makes so much more sense when you put Ridley at the top of that?
Absolutely. Because the whole conversation in the offseason was, just Christian Kirk worth all that money? And look, I'm not mad at Christian Kirk for signing the deal. It's a matter of, can he be as productive as the Jaguars want him to be? And he's done a good job, but I think he's at his best when he has a DeAndre Hopkins opposite him. And that's what Calvin really provides next year. And I think, to your point, Sully, this makes life eminently easier for Trevor Lawrence. So hopefully Breech will quit throwing interceptions in the end zone and costing Jaguars the games.
Yeah, and if you're Jacksonville, and again, this is a bizarre trade. You know, you don't see teams calling up and say, hey, you know that suspended player you have? We're thinking about trading for him, even though he's not even allowed to play for the rest of this entire season. But if you are Jacksonville, you do realize that you have Ridley under contract for one more year, so it's kind of a free the trial run. You're getting the old test drive where you say, all right, if he plays well and he still looks productive after his year off, then it looks like a smart trade. And if he doesn't, the conditional picks make the trade for lower picks, and it doesn't hurt you that bad. So I do feel like from Jacksonville's end, the trade made plenty of sense. This might have been the most sensible trade, most even trade of the day. And if you're the Falcons, you're like, man, we just got rid of the guy who's suspended, who's not playing anyway. We got a couple draft picks out of it, so we're happy. Both teams went home happy.
I think the other takeaway for me is that this is just a more conservative approach from teams not wanting to risk drafting players who are unproven. Claypool, the Bears know what they have. Even if you have to wait a year on Calvin Ridley, you know what you have, and he's special. So I think that's worth the wait. And I have no issue with the trade compensation in this deal either in terms of the Jaguars. Because the Jaguars, when you look at their sort of advanced metric football outsiders, they're like a replacement level team, although they've lost 5 straight now. They should be playing much better. And a lot of it comes down to the terribly crappy quarterback play at the worst possible moments. So if you can help him out, why not?
Yeah. The other thing too is the idea that, you'll if Ridley doesn't come back and play for the Jaguars in 2023, you give up a fifth and a fourth. Like that's burning draft capital. But I like the fact that it's like an escalating conditional situation for Jacksonville, because I assume you can't negotiate a contract with a suspended player.
I don't know. I haven't read the CBA that deep into it.
Surely they can't do a deal with Ridley now. I mean, no, they could talk to his agent and figure out the parameters for winning. If I'm Jacksonville, when he's reinstated, I am trying to get a deal done quickly, because Ridley only has 1 year left on his contract, that 5th year option, which told as a result of his suspension. And I want to try and get him under market relative to before he comes out and has like a huge year, and then you have to franchise tag him, et cetera, et cetera. So,
but what if he doesn't have a huge year? Then you're in a Russell Wilson situation.
well,
I don't know if there's a.
like
I mean, I was saying
less.
while you were gone, I was saying I would do the exact opposite. I would make him play out the year. I'd be willing to pay the tax because I don't want to give a big contract to somebody who might end up flopping.
I was thinking like low ball contract.
Oh, he's not going to do
and
that.
That's kind of an interesting question that Will was kind of brought up there. If they do, and I don't know the stipulations of the trade specifically, all the escalators and all that. But if they do franchise him, does that technically count as a new contract, and that would bump things up to a second round pick?
I would.
Or does it have to be a multi-year extension or whatever?
I think long term was the phrase used.
Okay.
We'll have to see it.
And it's probably written in the parameters of the trade deal, and it probably says it has to be a 2-year or a 3-year. Like I'm sure the exact
multiple year contract. Like
right.
Yeah.
Because if all of a sudden you're talking about having to pay him the guaranteed dollars and giving up a second round pick, that almost makes it less likely for them to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, let me just clarify this a little bit because, this is if he makes the team, it's at least a 4th. If he hits playing time milestones, it becomes a 3rd. Sorry, I had misread that earlier. And then if he gets a long-term deal done, it's a 2. I'm trying to see if there was
long-term would say beyond 1 year though. So.
Yeah, I would think. Well, yeah, it'd have to be. Yeah, I would think it would have to be.
So the franchise tag probably wouldn't count.
Right. And yeah, I wouldn't think so. Although the franchise tag deadline, obviously before the draft. So you clearly have to know before the 2024 draft what's done and what qualifies. So that would be interesting to see as well. Man, I mean, that's just that's a lot to that's a difficult negotiation where you're trying to figure out all those details. And by the way, it is if he gets reinstated by a certain date, it becomes a 2023 5th. If he is not reinstated by a certain date, it becomes a 6th round pick in the 2023 draft. So a lot going on there. But I would think franchise tag does not count.
Yeah.
I mean,
think of doing all that negotiating for this guy who can't even play this year.
I know. Wow. All right, let's take a break and we'll come back and talk some more trades next. All right. What trades am I? We'll do some winners and losers, of course. That's what we do. Pat did winners and losers. But
Here, I have a quick question from Victor Garcia in the chat. This is a good question, and you have 5 seconds to answer. Who should be angrier for not getting traded? Brandon Cooks, Elijah Moore, or Cam Akers?
Brandon Cooks.
Brandon Cooks.
I'm going with Elijah Moore.
I was going to say Elijah Moore.
Did you see what he said about Zach Wilson and whether they have chemistry?
No, I didn't see that.
I don't know. He doesn't throw me the ball enough.
Are we saying who is angrier or who should be angrier?
However you want to take the question.
I mean, Brandon Cooks was basically like, I'm going to go scorched earth and tell everyone about all the lies that happened in Houston because you messed with my playing career. Say, hey, buddy, didn't he sign an extension in Houston?
Brandon Cooks is going scorched earth. And at least if you're Elijah Moore, you play for a 5-3 team. If you're Cam Akers, you just won a Super Bowl. If you're Brandon Cooks, you are toiling away for arguably the worst team in the NFL. You were hoping to get out to greener pastures, and they said, no, you have to stay here and lose games with us, and we don't care about you. And he's, venting on Twitter. So I would say Cooks.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I think, but going into the deadline, we're hearing it now that Brandon Cooks is going scorched earth on the Texans. But going into the deadline, I think that's what me and Wilson were thinking. He was not happy, and he was not afraid to tell anybody who had a camera or a microphone or whatever that he was not happy with the situation with the New York Jets. Now, how does that play going forward? We could see a very similar thing with Elijah Moore. If all of a sudden he's every week doing a press conference where it's yep, Zach Wilson just hates throwing me the football. That's a little bit untenable.
If he wants Zach Wilson to throw him the football, he needs to wear the other team's shirt.
Zing!
Oh, up high, down hard.
Brandon Cooks tweeted, don't take a man's kindness for granted. Covered for the lies for too long. Those days are done. Cross the line with playing with my career. Bow and arrow emoji.
Sounds like me and Wilson on the show with Brinson.
I love that. Breech is this, Sully. I don't know if you've been introduced to passive aggressive Breech, but he's still reeling from the loss last night that the Bengals took at the hands of the Browns, and he will lash out.
He's not. You don't want to be the target of Breech's anger when he's.
So
when he's
I
at
sort of love it because usually I'm the one yelling at Brinson, so it's nice to have someone else join me in that little VW bug going down the street
In our clown car.
in our clown car. One more question, and then we can go to the winners loser. We're going to get next, but Allie and Atkins, I think, in the chat asked how mad. We talked about this in the pre-show. How mad should Aaron Rodgers be because all the wide receivers went to teams not named the Green Bay Packers?
very.
Yeah.
Should we mad at
I
it?
mean, if you're the Packers, I mean, let's just take out.
Let me ask you this: what are the Packers thinking over the last 3 years of the wide receiver? Just explain to me. Like, give me a logical explanation. Like, why would they do this?
We have Aaron Rodgers. He will make anyone look good. That's
that
the only logic I can think of.
The Packers are pretty steadfast in their belief that you don't. They are draft pick hoarders like me. Now the usage of those draft picks you could call that into question certainly. I think. Look, I don't think the Packers should give up a second round pick for Chase Claypool, just like the Bears shouldn't. I think they could definitely give up a second round pick for Elijah Moore, who's somebody who could work underneath and has been playing for Matt LaFleur's brother in his offensive system and understands that system and could easily make the transition.
Can I ask a neutral observer a question here? Sully, is there any rational explanation for not giving up a second round pick for Chase Claypool if you're the Packers, but giving up a second round pick for Elijah Moore, who has caught 4 balls in 2 years?
You should have made either one of those deals.
Well, Elijah Moore's contract he got a year.
He's got 1 more year in his deal. They're both second round picks.
Okay.
I'll say this though: does it change anything if tomorrow or next week they sign OBJ? And here we go. They're just like that. Just like me and Victor were on the same wavelength right there. in the chat.
The health thing is the only thing that concerns me. Other than that, there's no reason not to.
Oh, I would say the other thing that concerns me is, does OBJ want to go to a team that's currently 3-5?
That's
if I'm
true.
Odell, I'm saying, let's see. Here's what I want to avoid: cold weather and a team with a losing record. And the Packers check both those boxes of teams. And he did want to go there.
Are the Packers tanking by not trading for a wide receiver?
Stop it. For a
But
quarterback.
Odell did want to go there last November, and then the Rams swooped in and took him. So, maybe it's an option, but I don't think it's an option you can count on if you're the Packers.
The only thing that I would say with that is that, again, it's spinning it in a bad way for not doing anything. At least you could say to OBJ, well, you'll get a lot of volume. There's a lot of targets to be had in Green Bay. Not really fighting for much.
When is OBJ definitely going to be able to come back on the field? I mean, like he tore his ACL at the Super Bowl.
I thought I read a report recently that it was, like December or something along those
Yeah, it was
lines.
supposed to be mid-November. Now it seems like it's been pushed back to November. And as far as he goes, he was tweeting with Marcus Spears a couple weeks ago, and Spears made a list of teams Odell should think about, and Odell said, "I like that list," and it was Chiefs, Packers, Rams, Bills, and Ravens.
You think you like that list?
Well, if he tweeted that list again this week, now the Packers are 3-5, he might say, "I like everyone on that list except for the Packers."
Okay.
He's willing to go to the 2021 Rams, the 2020 Bucks, or the 2019 Chiefs. Like,
I will go to
any of those
playoff
3
teams.
teams. He is interested in joining.
2007
breaking
Patriots,
news here.
He's down for whatever.
Those 7
Well, I feel like
they're available. Like he's, I'll
the Chiefs trading for Kadarius Toney might say, "Yeah, I don't think we'd be interested in Odell." The Rams might not be any good by the time Odell's looking to sign with someone. If the Rams are 4-7, I don't think Odell's going to be interested in playing for a team that has no shot at the playoffs, which leaves the Bills, the Ravens, and
I love that the Bears are pushing hard for that 7th seed, but the Rams just they cannot be involved in the playoffs. Obviously.
Well, it's different when Odell's choosing a team. That's the difference.
Okay.
This is not making a trade
maybe he should
where
sign
the
with
player has no
Bears to
say
help
in it.
them. Maybe he should sign with the Bears to help their playoff push.
Maybe he should, but he would pick the Packers before the Bears, who have a better quarterback.
I agree
Okay. Do you guys
with
want to
everybody.
by the way, there were actually like 2 trades that snuck in at the deadline. The Falcons traded for Rashad Fenton from the Chiefs for a conditional 7th round pick. Spicy. And I believe, Buffalo got Dean Marlowe from the Falcons for a 7th round pick. Falcons.
Did the Falcons lose their fax machine? They had
This
both
works.
these trades right here at the deadline.
God, that was the previously like wildest trade deadline day ever. Was that the Duberville thing was on the trade deadline day, right?
I think so.
I feel like it. Now you can just send an email, but my man was trying to use the fax.
Sully's like, what the hell are you talking about with the Duberville thing? So Sully, before you were born,
Thank you.
there's this thing called fax machines.
Yes.
and John, was it Elway?
No, it was before free agency, so it wasn't.
Okay, it was. They had to like they were faxing in something to trade him before free. It was in the offseason, but they messed up and didn't fax something correctly, and as a result, they had to let him go. It was at the time like one of the wildest NFL offseason stories ever.
Twitter would have been wild that day.
Only 2014. It wasn't even that long ago. So still using fax machines back then. The agent was promptly fired, and Dumerville ended up in Baltimore eventually, I believe.
Yes. Love Elvis Dumerville.
What a great
also
story.
worth noting, Steelers trade for William Jackson III from
Oh, yeah, that was the other one.
the Commanders, formerly of the Bengals. And do you know the fun story about Will Jackson, Breech? With his
The Steelers wanted him.
and who did they take
in
with the
the
very next
draft?
pick?
They took Artie Burns, I
In
think.
2016. The
I
man's name
remember.
is Burns is in his name, and you drafted him to be quarterback. That's like drafting a quarterback named Pickett. What do you think was going to happen? Jesus. So we get William Jackson III.
Drafting receiver whose like last name is Slow.
Exactly. Our kicker, if his last name's McPherson. You know what I'm saying.
Oh, he missed it.
Sully like that one. Good.
Or like you draft a kicker whose name is like, oh no, what's his
Blewett?
name? Blewett, Chris Blewett from Pittsburgh. Yeah, it's like don't draft Blewett.
So the Steelers got help there. Rashad Fenton is interesting to me. I wonder if the Chiefs are happy with Josh Williams, their third-round pick out of Fayetteville State. Shout out to Fayetteville State, who had an interception a few weeks ago. And Jake Martin, the linebacker, got traded from the Jets to the Broncos for a fourth-round pick, which seems sort of rich for a linebacker. Oh, the Broncos also got a fifth-round pick in that deal, so maybe that evens it out. But I think that's it in terms of the trades that happened today.
And William Jackson, I will say, had a decent career with the
Great
Bengals.
career, absolutely.
And then he went to Washington, apparently didn't do his homework on what the Commanders were going to do with him, or the Commanders lied to him to get him in the door, or he just had money signs in his eyes, said, oh, you're going to give me that much money? I am gladly going to sign. Yes, Brinson, first-round pick, 24th overall. And so, and he played a lot of man while he was with the Bengals. He was asked to play a lot of zone while he was in Washington and Ron Rivera's defense, and that's just not his game. That's not something he thrives in. And so I do think he will play much better with the Steelers. He might not
really kind of botched by all parties involved there, right? Like,
yeah, I'm not, like, why, if you're the Commanders, why are you signing this guy if you're going to run a system that he's not great at? Why are you giving him this money?
Yeah, like,
and if you're William Jackson, why are you signing this contract to go play with a team that's not a great schematic fit for you? So it was really a weird situation. I do think he could end up playing quite a few snaps for the Steelers.
It's like not having the kid talk before like marriage. You get in there, it's like,
like 4 years in, 4 years into your relationship, you're like, I don't want to have kids.
You
She's
want
like,
6 kids? What? Like, so you've got.
I got a combination. $6 million, 6 kids. I don't know which one we're doing at this point.
$6 million, you get as many kids as you want, man.
Hopefully
that's
have
true,
the talk,
right?
Sully.
Yeah, $6 million, you get the nicest vasectomy you can buy.
Exactly.
Let's go to winners and losers, and I think so when we do the winners and losers, let's not just make it about today. Just make it about the trade deadline as a whole. So in other words, like I'll start and I'll take an easy one, but just to sort of encompass the whole thing, and we can just sort of go around the horn until we run out of them. Christian McCaffrey, clearly a winner.
So predictable.
I'm just sort of noting that we can utilize all the other ones. McCaffrey goes to San Francisco, where he gets to play with a competent offensive coordinator and head coach, Kyle Shanahan, competent play caller, immediately makes an impact. Yes, they give him a lot to get him, but if it helps San Francisco and it helps Jimmy Garoppolo a ton, I think McCaffrey, big winner at the trade deadline because of how he's going to be used and just the upgrade from the Panthers, who were probably not going to be good for the next 5 to 10 years, to the 49ers, who are good immediately. Breech.
I will say TJ Hockenson. He goes from the team with the worst record in the NFL that has no future and will probably be eliminated from the playoff race in like 2 weeks to a team that is actually competent, actually has a good offense, and could very well end up becoming a Super Bowl contender in the Minnesota Vikings. So it's a great ad for the Vikings, but a better ad or a better move for TJ Hockenson since he gets to play for a playoff contender.
I'm going to go with Kadarius Toney. That happened on October 27th. So doing the old Brinson retro trade details.
Great.
But we haven't really talked about that. But Chiefs gave up a 3rd-round pick, conditional, and then a 6th-round pick, both in 2023. The whole issue was replacing Tyreek Hill. Apparently, they don't need to really replace Tyreek Hill, but I don't think they're happy with the way Sky Moore's playing. We talked about Bayless Jones struggling to hold on to the football. Sky Moore's had those same issues as a rookie, and while he can grow into that role as a slot receiver or whatever they want him to do, Kadarius Toney, when my man's healthy and motivated, can ball out, and we saw that each and every week during this last year at Florida. Didn't see that quite so much with the Giants, and it seemed like he and Dable and Shane were not on the same page at any point during their time together in New York. And we know Andy Reid has a way of getting the most out of players, wherever they're coming from. And I think Tony's going to be extremely successful. He may have to understand that he's not going to get every bass thrown his way, but winning, as we like to say, fixes a lot of things. So in terms of today's trade, I'll say the Bears won. We talked about why with Chase Claypool, but I think that's a huge upgrade to that offense.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off that a little bit. I'm going to lump two quarterbacks together, Tua Tagovailoa and Justin Fields. I think both of those guys for the 2022 season are winners. They're
winners.
They're two winners, right? Yeah. What did I say?
He's doing two winners. I did two winners.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I'm going in. So for those guys, not only do they get better options, whether it's be on the defensive side or offensive side of the football for 2022, but symbolically, I think both of those moves are signs from their franchises that they believe in them. And we've had questions about both of those guys going into the season, whether the Bears believe in Fields with this new regime, whether or not this is a make or break year for Tua Tagovailoa. I think the fact that Miami's given up first round picks shows that they are very much interested in what Tua Tagovailoa is going to be beyond this season. And the fact that the Bears are adding wide receiver weapons after what we've seen from Justin Fields over the last 2 weeks, they believe in him right now.
So I guess that means I can't go. Can I go Bears or Joe Musso as a loser? Like, is that?
Sure.
You can.
In the beholder.
All right, so and look, you can go winners or losers either which way. I mean, I will say that. I mean, I agree that Justin Fields is a winner. I think Chase Claypool's probably a winner too, because now he doesn't have that competition in the wide receiver room. Like, he can go and be the guy. Like, go to Wilson's point. Go and be great for the rest of this season, and you will get a big contract in the offseason. I'll say a winner is Bradley Chubb, who goes from Denver, where things are not looking great, although they're not completely dead in the water, to Miami, where Florida. I mean, Denver, Colorado is awesome. Denver's awesome, but you get to go to Miami. Football players like being in Miami, and
Bienvenido Miami. Is that the song?
That is, yes. That predates the fax machine. The fact that the Dolphins traded a first-round pick for him is, to me, a very clear indication that he is going to get, that they are willing to pay what his asking price is in terms of contractual demands, aka they value his ability as a pass rusher, not only right now, but also in the future. And I think they'll give him a big old contract. Breech. How about Ryan Poles is a loser, by the way. We'll just do one round of losers. Ryan Poles is a loser for me. Gave up too much for Chase Claypool. I think it shows a fundamental misunderstanding of exactly how to value draft capital. So I will say
You're a loser.
that away. Breech.
Whew. My loser is Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers. You got outbid for Chase Claypool. You didn't add a receiver. You didn't improve your offense. And you know what? So I think we were talking about earlier if we thought Aaron Rodgers would be upset by this. I am sure we will find out later this week when he does his weekly interview, because as we always say, there is no one more forthcoming on this earth than passive-aggressive Aaron Rodgers. And if he does not approve of the fact they didn't make a trade, he will passive-aggressively let us all know that in the next day or two.
You're a loser.
Passive aggressive recognizes passive aggressive. That's what I'm hearing from you, Breech. Fair enough.
Hey, no one knows it better than me and Aaron.
I'm going to go a little off the out in left field here. I'm going to say a loser. A loser is the Denver Broncos, because they have this 2023 first round pick. They're going to have to pick a quarterback, because I don't think Russ Wilson is going to magically turn into good Russ Wilson, and they're going to have some decisions to make in 6 months' time, Sully, about what to do with this quarterback position. Now, look, they'll get better with the first round pick. Don't get me wrong if they go another direction, but the conversations that we may have to have about what they're going to do makes them a loser for me.
Yep.
You're a loser.
Sorry, Prisco. I forgot to I got in the way.
I was like, what if Sully's going to realize that Prisco? Oh, you get muted when Pete comes on somehow. Which is terrible, by the way.
That's
Yeah,
exciting. That's good. I'll go a loser for me. The Detroit Lions, clear sign over the last couple of days that they are knocking on the door on a full-fledged rebuild, moving on from TJ Hawkinson, firing the defensive backs coach. It feels like it's inevitable that Dan Campbell is going to get fired at this point if the things are trending the way that they are. And then you have the conversations about Jared Goff and whether all that's going to happen. So for me, Detroit Lions fans, if you've seen better days, or maybe you haven't, I don't know.
Yeah, win.
You're a loser.
It's a podcast, but we just play Pete yelling loser over and over again. All right, that'll do it for us. Breaking down the trade deadline, the wildest trade deadline day in NFL history. Of course, we'll be back tomorrow with the Brady Quinn Football Show. Much more to unpack after the trade deadline. For Breech, for Sully, for Ryan Wilson from Syracuse, New York. I'm Brinson. We'll see you guys later.